And welcome back, folks. My name is Michael Yates. This is the Ridgeview Pod, where we try to cover everything hope, healing, and recovery related. We're so glad you've taken time out of your day to join us. My guest today is Andy O'Quinn with Torch. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm glad you are here. Andy, tell me, I think Torch has gone through a name change. Is it not? Has the acronym changed?
No, actually, we're still using the same acronym. We're changing our name from Trinity Outreach Center of Hope to the Tennessee Outreach uh, Center for the Homeless, but we're still using Torch to try. The Torch is our name, and so we still want to keep the same name.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Well, I think I learned about Torch. Man, it's weird. The pandemic seems to have like warped my sense of time.
Oh
So I,
yeah,
I don't know if it's been 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, but uh, at the time, I think you were located at a church.
that's right.
Is that where you guys are
We were in
still?
the Trinity Center, which is where the name comes from, and that's one of the reasons why we decided to change the name was because we weren't in the Trinity Center anymore. And plus, we wanted to make sure when Torch first started, the organization, Sheila Michael started Torch in 2012, and she really wanted an organization that helped people, but it wasn't necessarily focused specifically on the homeless. It wasn't until after she did a bunch of interviews and talked to a bunch of people about what is the biggest need in the community that homelessness was the one that she continued to hear over and over again. And so the focus for Torch really became homeless services. And so, really, starting in around 2013, 2012 was when we really started doing homeless, but 2013 is when it kind of became the focus,
Yeah.
continuing on from there. So,
Okay.
and then I started in 2015. So
So
I've
how
been
did you tell me about your story of getting to Torch?
Sure. I I've been doing this kind of services for a long time. So my first job out of college was working in a domestic violence shelter.
Mm,
And originally I was interested in law, so I worked as essentially a paralegal, helping people get protective orders. And what I found was that I really enjoyed the engagement and working with clients and trying to help them more than I enjoyed the law, the
uh-huh.
law part of it. So when I was looking for my next job, I looked specifically for something that was doing like shelter to based services. And
Okay.
so I went from working in a domestic violence shelter in Savannah, Georgia, to working in a homeless shelter in Athens, Georgia, from working in a homeless shelter to working at the Helen Ross McNabb Center. I worked there for 8 years in the homeless services for the Helen Ross McNabb Center in Knoxville doing street outreach. And then in 2015, the position came available here for the executive director position, and I
Okay.
jumped on it.
I think maybe it was around that 15 mark, maybe as
Hmm.
part of you assuming that role as executive director there, that maybe that's when I came over there and met you the
Yeah,
first
that's right.
time.
It was
So,
around that time.
wow, Savannah, Georgia,
Yeah.
and Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been around. I've been doing this for a long time though. When I start counting up the years, I start feeling old. Like the more I count up the years, I've been doing this kind of work for about 20 years, but I don't have any, I think a lot of folks get burned out. I've never gotten burned out in terms of the type of work that I do. I feel like this is exactly what I want to be doing is
Yeah.
working with the homeless. It's like
Well,
a perfect fit for my personality, I guess.
tell me about that, because usually these conversations we conclude with asking about how you take care of yourself. But I'm curious, yeah, how has this been an alignment for your sense of calling or vocation? How does that fit so well, and you've been immune to getting burned out?
Well, I wouldn't say actually for years I did struggle with it. I mean, especially
Uh,
when I first started out. I remember that was one of the reasons why I switched from domestic violence services was it was pretty
mm,
intense working. Worked specifically with domestic violence and sexual assault victims. And so my job would be to go in every day and meet with people and have them describe to me the worst thing that's ever happened to them
mm.
in detail so that I can then give that information to the judge. Um, and so that for doing that for like 4 years was really intense. So I knew I still wanted to do a job that helped people because I just felt like at that point I realized that that was my calling.
Mm.
But doing something that intense was not something I wanted to do. When I switched over to homeless services, it was almost like like I said, it was I don't know how to describe it, but it was like a perfect fit. I knew
Hmm.
that this was kind of what I was made to do after even the first few weeks. I was like, in fact, to be honest with you, what I wanted to do was I wanted to be an executive director of a homeless services program. I had a supervisor. Her name was Courtney Davis in Athens, Georgia, and she kind of became a role model.
Huh.
And I thought to myself, like, that's the job I want in the future. Is I
Yeah.
want her job because
Wow.
she gets to do the homeless services and help the community, but it's also really fun and interesting for me anyway. I don't know that everybody finds this fun and interesting, but to design programs,
Yeah.
to start out with a piece of paper where you're designing an idea for something that you want to do, and then 5 years later, you're doing that thing. Actually, kind of building on that. So, Torch right now is we're doing a fundraiser. It's called Raise the Roof. And
Yeah.
the Raise the Roof program is specifically for we're trying to build something called something we're calling temporary housing for the homeless. And what temporary what this is going to be is it's going to be 6 units specifically set aside for homeless families with children and people who are severely disabled. Um, and so we have another 3 units besides, so that'll make 9 places where people who are homeless and staying outside can transition into until they can get into permanent housing. It's um it's we're going to say that it's taking place of shelter because each family gets an apartment. You wouldn't know their apartment from anybody else's. You wouldn't.
Right.
It's not a shelter in that it's
Uh-huh.
never going to feel like a shelter. It's always going to feel like a home. When we came up with this idea 5 years ago, the
Uh-huh.
idea was we wanted a place that when a child gets dropped off from the bus, the other children don't know they're being dropped off in a shelter.
Mhm.
We wanted a place where I had this idea in my head that, or we did, that, you know, there's a mom and she's talking to her kid, and the kid's maybe in college, and they're talking about the past, and the mom said, "Well, we stayed in we were homeless at one time and stayed
Mhm.
in a place." And the kid doesn't even know that they were homeless because the place was so nice and so normal and felt so much like a home rather than any kind of shelter.
Mhm.
And so that's exactly what we're going for, is we're going for something like that. My theory has always been that if you want to end homelessness, you have to look at ending homelessness with the next generation. We have to
Mhm.
figure out how to, you know, if we have parents that are homeless, what can we do to engage the children so they
Mhm.
don't become homeless as well?
Mhm.
And that's really the way that we're going to end homelessness, is to focus on the future. And I feel like that's part of it, is for when children are in a situation where they're homeless, they're not labeled as homeless. They don't feel like they're
Mhm.
homeless, and they don't feel like they don't have that sort of mentality that they're less than because they're homeless. I just
Yeah.
want them to feel like when they're in this place that we're building, that they're in a home.
Yeah, that's great. Well, if folks who are watching or listening to this have an interest in knowing how to support this effort, what's the best way for them to do that?
We have a website. Um, it's www.oakridgetorch.org, or you can just Google Torch.
Hmm.
Um,
We'll put the link in the comments section so
okay,
folks
cool.
will know.
Yeah. So that's the best way to make a donation, and then I believe we can make a donation through Facebook as well.
And so, where are you in fulfilling this vision? Or is it close to fruition, or is it?
We were moving pretty fast until the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the cost of everything, like, so there weren't any workers. Like, we were we were getting ready for groundbreaking, and then suddenly the company that we were working with, they said that they're because of the manufacturing, they weren't going to be able to work on the homes for us, so we had to find somebody else. And then, of course, the cost of materials and wood and things like that doubled. And so we are hoping to do a groundbreaking in the next couple of months.
Good.
And that will start the process. We have the city of Oak Ridge has been fantastic. They've helped us along a lot um, with the property. The land bank has helped us with the property, and then the city of Oak Ridge is going to do some of the infrastructure work for us. They've just taken on and said that they want to help our project, and so
Right.
they're going to upgrade the infrastructure that the homes are going to be built on. Um, So
Wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful.
the city has been in great in supporting this.
So in terms of Anderson County itself or Oak Ridge specifically, have you seen evidence of an increase in people experiencing homelessness since the pandemic? How's that? Is your phone ringing off the hook more than ever?
The phone is ringing off the hook more than ever. You know, people ask me that a lot, and it's really interesting in terms of statistics because what happened with the pandemic was not as many people were becoming homeless because evictions were ending. So what you have to one of the things that's interesting to realize is that about 60% of our clients become homeless for a very short amount of time. They're living in a rental house, something bad happens. Like for instance, they're living in a rental house and they're just getting by every month, but they've gotten by for months, for years. And then suddenly dad has an accident at work and he can't work for 3 months and they can't pay their rent and they don't have any family in the area, so they become homeless. That is 60% of our clients.
Okay.
And so when we have that kind of situation, if you can help that person get into housing quickly, you're that's um, most of what we're doing. So I think people have this idea when they talk about homelessness that they're thinking of the people that they see out on the street, the people
Mhm.
that are like hanging out under the bridge at
Mhm.
Carm and places like that. But in our population, that's really only about 20% of the whole population that we work with. The other, like I said, 60% of them are people who are going to transition into a rental. Like
Mhm.
they don't want to be homeless. They don't want you to know that they're homeless. Chances
Mhm.
are you'll never see them because they don't want people to know that they're homeless.
Mhm.
They don't want that stigma.
Yeah.
There's another 20% that are just they're just not financially capable of making it on their own. So we have folks, this would an example of this would be like, a single female with two kids and she may be able to hold down a job, but the hours are always, because she has kids in school, it's difficult to get enough hours to make a living wage. And so that population, usually we try and help them get into public housing or get a
Okay.
Section 8 voucher, something like that. So 80% of our clients are clients that are, um, they're in housing and something happened.
Mhm.
And so they lost it
Mhm.
temporarily. I guess the reason that I'm saying that is because with the eviction moratorium, we haven't
Uh-huh.
had that same turnover. But we also haven't had the same number of empty apartments coming
Mhm.
available. And so what's happened is it was almost like things kind of got put on pause.
Hmm.
We were slowly able to get some of the folks into housing, but for the most part, the folks that we had that should have normally taken 3 months to get housed, it took 9 months to
Yeah.
get housed or longer.
Yeah.
So the eviction so far, it, there hasn't been a more than what would normally increase in terms of the number of people that are homeless, but the people that are homeless are stuck for longer.
Okay.
And we're receiving more telephone calls, not necessarily for people who are on the streets today. A lot of the telephone calls we're receiving are from people who are worried that they're going to get evicted.
Oh.
And when they do, they want to know what homeless services are available if they become homeless.
Oh,
So, because
interesting.
with the moratorium, I think it's in the back of a lot of people's minds, and a lot of people are going to, you know, a lot of people are
Yeah.
behind on their rent, and they're
Yeah.
afraid of what's going to happen when that
Just
happens.
another stressor, burden, anxiety, mounting thing for them to worry about.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's difficult for Torch. The Torch is specifically for people who are staying outside or on the streets.
Mhm.
If a person is not staying, if we can't go and meet with them outside or on the streets, then we can't enroll them because we're homeless services. That's what we
Mhm.
do. So for those other services, we end up talking to people and trying to refer them. A lot of people don't know this, but there's actually money through THDA, the um,
Was that Tennessee Housing?
uh, Development
Yeah,
Association. Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. But they have a program specifically for people who are under eviction status due to something to do with coronavirus. So it can be they're willing to be flexible. The situation can be, you weren't able to work enough hours because your kids couldn't go to school. Like that's coronavirus related.
Hmm.
So if you can give them a reason why it's related to coronavirus, you can get assistance to help you pay your past due rent and to help pay future rental payments as well until you can get back on your feet.
Okay.
So we refer a lot of people to THDA for that program, and that program does have funding.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of people knowing about it and getting in contact with
Well,
THDA for
we'll
that.
put that link in the comments section as
Yeah, it's
well. That's
definitely
a
needed, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of it's there. The message hasn't really gotten out that well that that service
uh
is available. I don't feel
yeah.
so, but I
So
definitely want to tell
you're
people
a
about it.
hub also in a network of in some respects to helping people get connected to the right service that they may benefit from.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Uh,
We field a lot of telephone calls, and usually in a day we'll field a number of telephone calls, but we always end up with more telephone calls on the voicemail
yeah, yeah.
than we were able to field in a day. So we're always trying to get one step, we're
Yeah.
always one step behind. But we're actually hiring somebody specifically to cover the phones because we've had this in because the numbers of telephone calls have
Right.
increased so much.
Well, I mean, I've been to your website. There's a lot of great information on there. Certainly about the Raise a Roof campaign. I encourage our viewers to go check it out. Uh, Gosh, Andy, I mean, part of what you said reminded me of. He's a poet, a writer, David White, and I'm going to butcher this, I'm sure, but he. I read somewhere where he said, when someone can align their vocational calling with something that actually is doing some good in the world, it's the best place to be. So keep up the great work. I think it's so cool that you have found yourself exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, that's how I
Uh,
feel.
Boy, wouldn't so many people are searching for that
Hmm.
and for themselves. Uh, as your campaign continues to go or when groundbreaking occurs and you want to come in and talk about it, please, love to have you back.
Sure, absolutely.
Keep up the great work, and thanks for taking time to come in and spend some time with us.
No, it's been great. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. As always, we ask you to subscribe, ring the bell so that you get notification of each week's episode. Uh, and as we always say, take good care of yourself, and we hope to see you next week. Bye bye, everyone.